This is somebody who lost over 30 pounds. Her condition just deteriorated.
She was skin and bones when the police found her.
Why is this person giving my sister all these medications? Why?
It's a control thing. It's an absolute 100% dependency on him thing.
I can't forget seeing Sarah's mom, Tina, holding a baggie that had Sarah's ashes and her hair, saying, "This is all I have left."
The biggest mistake we always make is that we think we know what the boogeyman looks like. We don't.
Montgomery County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Mountwood Street in Clarksburg, Maryland. My girlfriend, I think, overdosed. I'm trying to resuscitate her right now.
He had just discovered her on the couch, and he was on the phone with them as he was performing CPR.
Is she breathing?
She's not breathing.
He's hysterical. He's saying she's not breathing, and they're trying to talk him through CPR.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And they encourage him to try again.
I gotcha. I'm gonna keep count with you, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4.
3, 4. 1,
1,
2, 3.
3.
There is no way they can resuscitate her.
3,
4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
They're there? Okay, go let them in.
When the paramedics come, they pronounce Sarah dead.
Sarah Harris, 25 years old, had her whole life still ahead of her. My name is Mike Murillo. I'm a reporter at WTOP in Washington, D.C. Sarah was just a vibrant girl. She, in 2020, won Miss Maryland Petite, which is a competition in the state.
She was curious about the world, that wanted to keep learning.
Someone who was just the light of life. She lit up a room when she walked in. I'm Rod Demery. I'm a retired homicide detective. "25-year-olds just don't die of natural causes."
Once the police got to the crime scene, they found tourniquets, they found syringes, and they found vials, to include ketamine vials, in Sarah's purse, which was on the kitchen island.
You know, almost like a drug house. And there is Sarah, lifeless, surrounded by all these things. What is this? Is this an accidental overdose? Is this a suicide?
Those are very critical moments at that point for an investigator to determine in a few short milliseconds on whether or not he has a crime scene, an accident scene, or a natural causes scene.
Police, when they responded to the scene in this case, were sort of under the impression that this was a simple drug overdose. My name is Jennifer Harrison. I'm an assistant state's attorney here in Montgomery County, Maryland. James Ryan was there on scene. He told police that he was a doctor.
This was someone he loved, he was trying to take care of, but investigators were told that she was suicidal. She was the one who administered the drugs to herself.
One of the things that James Ryan also told the police when they arrived to the Clarksburg house on the day of Sarah Harris's death, that she had actually overdosed about a month prior to her death on these same drugs.
That alone should have been a huge wake up. I'm Dr. Joni Johnston, a clinical and forensic psychologist and private investigator. She had overdosed before and apparently had to get CPR for a number of minutes before she was revived.
The questions are, how did she get the drugs?
The police had no other information, and so they believed that she was a drug addict, that she had stolen these drugs.
She had some mental health challenges when she was kind of in her middle teens.
Like so many Americans, so many people around the world, she struggled with depression and anxiety.
The Harris family dealt with more tragedies than any one family should have to go through. My name's Kimberly Sissel. I'm an assistant state's attorney here at the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. As vivacious and fun-loving as Sarah was, and as we saw in videos and pictures and heard about from her family, they definitely had their share of hardships.
Sarah Harris's brother died unexpectedly of a heart attack.
So January the 8th of 2022, her brother Christopher dies, and I think that would be devastating. I mean, losing a sibling is so hard, especially at the age of 38. I mean, this is her big brother.
She completely changed, and that was something that was really apparent to her family. She really had stopped doing much of the things that she did in her daily life. She basically was home, sedated for a lot of the time.
Something wasn't right.
People get addicted to drugs very easily for one simple reason: they make you feel better.
They gave her a bit of a reprieve from some of the hardships going on in her life.
To have somebody who may not be getting other treatment or not getting the right treatment, then it is not uncommon to see somebody who's self-medicating. When you stop taking that medication, you experience withdrawal or you feel bad. And so you want that medication more and more, and it becomes a dependence.
You really could see the addiction taking hold. You could see her slowly kind of wasting away.
This is somebody who lost over 30 pounds. Her condition just deteriorated over 7 months, unbelievably so.
Dr. James Ryan, a respected oral surgeon in Germantown. He lived in Clarksburg, Maryland, which is probably about a 35-minute drive from Washington, D.C., so very suburban area. You can get that big home with the garage and the yard for your kids to run around. He had a very successful practice.
A very well-experienced, well-educated doctor who many other practices would refer people to.
The fall of 2020, Sarah goes to get her wisdom teeth removed, and she meets James Ryan. He's her dentist who performs the surgery. And as part of the consultation, she mentions to him that she has experience working in a dental office.
He would absolutely have someone like Sarah there. So he decides he wants to hire her to work for his practice.
And she's thrilled to be working for him.
She was very smart. She had traveled to different places in the world. She lived for a period of time in Saudi Arabia with her family. She wanted to extend her education and become a surgical assistant. She was working on that with Dr. Ryan, sort of under his tutelage.
Sarah's role would be an assistant. She would prep clients, and she would be there at his right hand to assist in anything that he needed.
He wined and dined her. He took her on trips to Bahamas. He bought her cars.
I saw a practice where it almost seemed like a family that was gathered there. Her sister, Rachel Harris, worked there as a business manager.
Sarah's mother and James Ryan were very close. He called her mom or mother, so he referred to her as a mother figure in his own life. They would text every day. They would talk about going to church and about religion.
This person seems to be in a good place and a provider as well.
In some respects, it is kind of a whirlwind relationship in the sense that, she begins working for him in his office in the fall of 2020. In January of 2021, their relationship becomes romantic. And then in August, she is moving in with him.
I think James is moving rather rapidly with Sarah. I think that her trust was just immersed into this person.
There is this power imbalance in a way in that relationship. When you're reporting to somebody, they have control over your paycheck, puts a different spin on that. And then I think on top of that, you have this 20+ age difference between the two of them.
There was a great deal of trust put into James with the care of Sarah. Sarah was in real trouble, and I think no one recognized that.
From what the family described, it seemed like there was some suspicion there that things were going bad and they weren't seeing her anymore as much as they were seeing her before, which obviously raised some concerns.
Rachel and their mother, Tina Harris, had called her and she seemed out of it. Things just seemed off, so they went over there and they went inside. And they found these vials of drugs all over the house.
They're astonished. They're astonished by the number of drugs and the paraphernalia and the hospital stuff and the IV and all the things that they find at this house.
You could see the marks on her arm from the use of the IVs, and they knew something was up.
Sarah Harris and James Ryan told them, it's just saline, we're just giving her fluid, she was dehydrated, this is nothing, untoward.
We are going to report you, we're going to the police. You could lose your license, your practice, you name it.
Sarah threatened, I think not to cut off communication with her if she turned him in to the authorities.
I'm sure they felt just powerless, helpless, and terrified to see her change in so many ways.
He agreed to not provide her with the drugs anymore. They believed it. They had a doctor here. He's the one you would trust.
James Ryan was a very learned man.
Ryan was from New York. He did well at school.
Look at his repertoire. I mean, there's schools like Harvard and NYU, all these great institutions as well.
He decided that he really didn't want to be a dentist and then specialized in kind of oral surgery.
He got a lot of attention when his practice opened in Germantown, and it seemed to be a very successful practice in that he specialized in everything from wisdom teeth being taken out to lip ties and tongue ties for infants. You go search for his practice online, some of the comments there were people touted his work. Compassionate, great bedside manner. I'd give him 10 stars if I could, were some of the comments I remember seeing.
People that are as talented or intelligent or smart as James are always looked up to. They become heroes. Anyone in the medical field, especially a surgeon, a doctor, a dentist or someone, it always creates this sort of aura around them. They heal people.
Once she moved in with James Ryan, her light was kind of snuffed out. She really had stopped doing much of the things that she did in her daily life.
The sister, who was the business manager there at the practice, realized she wasn't showing up to work every day.
Rachel was talking with Sarah on the phone. She seemed out of it. She was kind of slurring her words, and Rachel went over there by herself, again, went inside. And this time, she took pictures. There were bloody footprints on kitchen mats. There were these vials again everywhere, syringes, used syringes, catheters, tourniquets, the blue tourniquets like you would get from a oral surgery practice. And Rachel at that point kind of recognized what was going on.
They confronted James Ryan, telling him, you do not want to continue giving her these drugs. You shouldn't continue to give her these drugs.
James Ryan promised, that he wouldn't bring home any more drugs, he wouldn't give Sarah anything anymore. And so I think she believed him when he said, this is it.
Sarah's mom last saw her on January the 25th. They had gone and actually picked out a gravesite for Christopher, their older brother. And her mom had later said that that was a good day in the sense that Sarah hugged her and felt kind of more present.
And then, of course, fast forward to that tragic day, January 26th. Sarah was found dead at the home in Clarksburg.
James wakes up and he goes down and finds all this paraphernalia essentially on the floor, and there is Sarah, lifeless, surrounded by all these things. And so he FaceTimes Sarah's family and actually shows them on the FaceTime video her body on the floor. It absolutely would have been so traumatizing. And here's the mom waking up to her other daughter screaming. It would just be horrible to find out in that way.
So the cause of death was the mixed drug intoxication, but the toxicology report was ketamine, propofol, and diazepam. These vials that were in his house, these aren't street drugs. These aren't drugs that, doctors prescribe. These are vials that are made for multiple uses within a doctor's practice.
These are the things that are at the house. These are the things that James has access to.
Rachel Harris believed he was responsible for her deaths. They saw him essentially as her drug dealer.
And then I think things take a very different turn.
So what that led to Rachel doing while she's still grieving her brother and grieving her sister, so two close family members, she said she took all of what she could from her and spent nights, long nights, just trying to figure out how to break in to essentially her sister's iCloud, maybe guessing passwords. She was able to find a way, but she knew the answer was in Sarah's phone, in her electronics, and somehow was able to get into that iCloud account.
And in the phone is a smoking gun.
text after text after text and communication after communication, talking about drugs. This is a situation where this should never have happened.
And so she was able to compile a binder full of evidence from the victim's iCloud and hand it over to Montgomery County Police.
She is not an average overdose death. There's more here. Please investigate it. It was when she did that led to this case really just opening wide up. And that binder turned this overdose case into an actual homicide investigation. I remember getting a call that we just found out the Montgomery County Police Department is going to have a press conference. We had not only the police chief, but also the state's attorney and others gathered there to make remarks during this press conference. So that gives you an idea that something big is about to be told to the community. We all gathered around, and that's when the police chief first came up and said he's here today to tell us about the case of a woman who died of an overdose.
Sarah Harris, a 25-year-old female, was discovered deceased in the residence.
But it's no average overdose case.
These bottles are not the type of medication that would normally be dispensed from a pharmacy and are usually reserved for clinical medical settings.
And that's where we found out the person believed to be behind this, the person who provided her with all these drugs that eventually would take her life, was Dr. James Ryan, accused of murder.
Murder is a charge that needs to be executed immediately. There's a risk for flight. There's danger. So you're going to catch them wherever you can, whenever you can.
On today's date, Dr. James Ryan was taken into custody as he was going to his practice. He has been charged with second-degree murder and related crimes.
This was a very big story. This was the doctor people trusted. They turned to for their loved ones, their kids, and themselves as well. And then to turn on a television, turn on the radio, and hear this man is wanted, essentially, and arrested for killing his girlfriend. It was just sent shockwave to the community.
There are 10 total charges currently in the charging document pending against Dr. Ryan. The most serious charge against him is a charge of second-degree murder.
We also saw a list of other charges that are essentially those you see with people who deal drugs.
He's basically become her drug dealer.
Jennifer and I are members of our office's overdose task force. We deal with all the fatal overdose cases that come through our office.
We learned about this case after they received the binder from the victim's sister, and they briefed us on what they had and what they were looking at in terms of these text messages.
Of course, police had to go get those text messages themselves, so they subpoenaed those from the different companies.
There's literally a roadmap and a blueprint to how Sarah became addicted and how she ultimately died.
The text messages were of paramount importance in this case and really painted the picture for what was going on between these two behind closed doors.
We had messages going from February 2021 until January 2022, so we had a decent amount of time to look through and to kind of understand the pattern of life that had developed between these two.
I can't say I've seen text messages like this before. There was a lot of the normal love messages you'd expect in a relationship, right? But instead of saying, honey, can you bring some milk home from the store, it's, can you bring drugs from your doctor's office?
She would essentially order up a grocery list of supplies and drugs. We need catheters, we need IV lines, we need the IV pole, we need more bottles of ketamine and propofol. She would essentially order them, and he would always reassure her that he would bring some home with him.
There were messages where he was telling her how much to push. He had gone to the office or something, and he would say, push 2 cc's at this point. So he was advising her and guiding her the whole time. And as this person in her life, as this doctor, she listened to him. Sarah Harris was addicted to these drugs by the time of her death because James Ryan made her addicted. We actually had the text messages of him introducing her to these drugs.
Sarah confided in James about her depression. He's a medical professional, he may be able to help. When Sarah explains to James that she has anxiety issues, he quickly tells her that he can make it go away.
Anxiety is as debilitating as depression. It is so painful for people who suffer from it. And so when he says, let me give you something that's going to take that anxiety away, it would feel like a miracle.
James tells her he can make it go away in 6 seconds and how he's going to do it.
You know, I can give you this injection. He sort of suggests it as a solution to her problems.
The main drugs in this case, the sedatives in this case, were ketamine, propofol, and midazolam.
These medications are addictive. Ketamine can be very addictive, benzodiazepines are addictive, and that's why they're given and monitored under a treatment umbrella.
When you go in for oral surgery and they put you under with these drugs, they have what they call a crash cart right there with a defibrillator, with oxygen, with other drugs that counteract the effects of these drugs because they are so potent and so dangerous.
He would know that what he was doing was against professional ethics. And that is shocking to me.
I personally don't think that's any different than someone giving someone heroin. I think like a homicide detective, and I look for the very bad in people. I think 2 things. 1, he wants to make her think he's magic. He can make it all go away. 2, I think that he anticipated a drug dependency and he has complete control over her now. I don't think there was anything innocent about that, and I think it was all done by design.
Another chilling part of this case was in those text messages where Sarah admitted to an ex-boyfriend that she overdosed before her death and that she had CPR done on her for 5 minutes. She was near death before after using these drugs, yet they continued to come home. He agreed to not provide her with the drugs anymore, and unfortunately that didn't happen, and it continued throughout.
As the investigator started to learn more about this case, it was pretty eye-opening what was going on here. James had such extensive knowledge in drugs and how to administer drugs. He would tell Sarah what she needed to do, how to make a drug more potent.
In one of the messages he wrote, eat a grapefruit juice or a grapefruit. It makes the meds way more potent. Eat or drink before the meds.
He is not only enabling her to continue this addiction, he is encouraging it.
Where's the Xanax? James Ryan says to that from Sarah, if you can tolerate them, leave them under the tongue. They're in my trunk.
It seems as if there are points in time that Sarah is wondering if what she's experiencing is good, if it's normal, if it's something that she should be experiencing. And so at one point, for example, she texts James and says, I feel like I'm floating.
He says that's a good thing. That's encouraging her. That's comforting her. You know, there's nothing wrong here. Continue to do it.
Those text messages showed it's someone who's drowning, continuing to drown more and more. And unfortunately, the person who should be helping her, in this case, appears like he was not. He was furthering her demise, as we would find out.
We have a text message from Dr. Ryan to the victim, Sarah Harris, that essentially says, if you wake up, I just gave you ketamine while you were asleep.
Then he sends another message several hours later. Every time you woke up, you were sobbing. I couldn't understand what you were saying because of the ketamine. I just hugged you.
The fact that he injected her when she was asleep is something I just can't get my head around. It's inexcusable.
He had gotten her hooked on these drugs, but also was the sole person that could give them to her. And that's really how that sort of power dynamic with that sort of relationship works.
I look at this case and I absolutely remove the fact that he's a surgeon and I replace it with the fact that he's manipulated this young girl and he wants to keep her under his control. That was just his way of doing it.
There's evidence in the text messages that he would leave her hooked up to her IV and go upstairs and go to bed for the evening.
She would sleep on the couch. He would go upstairs and leave her there. And that looks to be what had happened on the last night of her life.
I think the biggest mistake we always make is that we think we know what the boogeyman looks like. We don't.
We argued depraved heart murder, in addition to manslaughter and drug distribution charges. The manslaughter is just a reckless disregard for human life, which we obviously thought was apparent here, but this case rose to the greater level of second-degree depraved heart murder because of his knowledge and expertise and experience.
On the outside, he seemed like he could never be responsible for something this sinister because he was well respected, he was a nice guy, but really behind closed doors he was doing something that no doctor who's taken an oath to protect life should ever be involved with.
How often do you hear of a doctor bringing home dangerous substances that really should be done in a setting of a hospital with crash carts and everything else and administering them at a home? And these were the allegations that were here in this case.
It's basically saying this person was so egregiously and recklessly indifferent to this person's well-being that they knowingly caused this person's death.
He was an expert in this field, trained in anesthesiology, an oral surgeon that would sedate patients on a regular basis with these same drugs. And he knew all the protocols in place that needed to be there for these drugs to be safely utilized.
But in this case, he had her hooked up to these drugs via IV at home without any of that monitoring.
The disparity between those two scenes was really something that was striking to us and really went to the depravity of what was actually going on.
The defense at trial tries to paint the picture of kind of a well-intentioned lover who had a good heart, who loved Sarah, and who just made the wrong choices.
He essentially was, acting as this doctor to her.
This is your partner. This is not a treating professional for you. And I think we all know as medical professionals or mental health professionals that it's not in our best interest, and certainly not in our loved ones' best interest, to be treating them for mental health conditions.
He absolutely knew that he wasn't helping her. He was helping himself. He just uses it for more control and influence. James exploited it under the guise of helping her through it.
You heard this time and time again in the courtroom from the prosecutors, is that he should have sought help for Sarah. He should have gone and seen a counselor, taken her to a counselor, made sure she was treated correctly for this, not through the medicines. That was the prosecution's case here, and that he was using this, they say, to control her.
He had a really good reputation.
He has this background that seems to be glowing in many ways.
These cases are very difficult when you deal with people with that sort of reputation and that sort of stature in the community. So Sarah's going to be vilified at some point, and that's unfortunate.
Out of one side of his mouth, he said he loved her, he would never do anything to hurt her, he was a doctor, he had her best interests at heart. At the same time, out of the other side of his mouth, he was saying she was an addict, she was depressed, all of these different things to distance himself from what had actually happened in an effort to save his own hide.
That was the defense's argument for the case. He was unaware in many ways that she was getting her hands on these drugs.
Rachel Harris took a picture of the IV pole on one of the occasions that she had come to see what was going on at the house. We argued that these are drugs that are only administered intravenously through the IV, and the IV pole on the crime scene was nowhere to be found. Later, when police went back and conducted a search warrant on Dr. Ryan's house, they did locate the IV pole that was conveniently tucked away in his front closet.
Propofol knocks in quickly. You count down from 3, you're out. So how did she have time to put that pole in the closet?
We were able to argue that he had hidden that from the police and made the crime scene appear as if nothing had been going on and that the IV pole hadn't been used.
Our argument throughout the trial really was the jury can think that he loved her, the jury can think that he was trying to help her, or had this misguided savior complex, but it really didn't matter because in the end, him giving her these drugs, that was the depraved heart of it. Giving them to her on that final night before she died, knowing just how dangerous they were.
We received notice, like a note from the judge, that the jury wanted to take a little break. And this was about an hour or something into the deliberations. So they did that. They were released to take a break, and then they came back, and within the next hour, they had a verdict.
James was convicted of second-degree murder, possession of drugs, and his contribution to Sarah's death. I think it's absolutely appropriate. The evidence was there. He did it.
It was a very emotional sentencing in this case because you had the family come up and do what they call impact statements. And I can't forget seeing Sarah's mom, Tina, go up there holding a baggie that had Sarah's ashes and her hair, saying, "This is all I have left."
Someone had asked me, wasn't taking the stand the hardest thing I ever had to do? And I said, no, burying my 2 children was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And I knew in my heart that he had killed her.
The guidelines for this case were 15 to 25 years. We sought above guidelines for multiple different reasons. Those included his position of power. He was the only person at fault in this case. It was so egregious, the actions, that we felt that an above guideline sentence was warranted. And the judge did give a sentence of 45 years.
The judge really just wanted to apparently send a message here by giving him a sentence beyond what was even recommended by the prosecutors. You don't see that often.
I think it really did send a message, which I think is very, very important. And the message being that prosecutors, law enforcement, they're starting to hold people accountable.
Thankfully, Sarah had a sister, Rachel, who joins us here today, who was her guardian angel after her death.
Sarah's truth was shown and James's lies were exposed. Sarah's legacy for us now is to hold people accountable and to make it so that these people in high power positions don't feel that they can play God and decide who gets to live and who gets to die.
You take an oath here in the United States, like you do everywhere else. You take an oath to do no harm.
And he is just so flagrantly abusing that oath and causing the death of a young, vibrant woman. Anytime someone loses a family member, that is a terrible, horrible thing that needs to be rectified, and we always fight for justice for our victims. But this case was special. I think it did send a message to everyone in the community that this sort of violation of the oath to do no harm is not going to be tolerated.